Lev Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development. The role of culture and social interactions are imperative to cognitive development, according to psychologist Lev Vygotsky. This lesson will discuss how social interactions play a role in cognitive development of children, provide an overview of Vygotsky's cultural historical theory, and describe the stages of speech and language development. A young child and his mother are playing with a shaped toy. The young child alone cannot figure out how the very shapes can fit into the designated holes. His mother describes how each shape can only fit into each chain-shaped hole. The mother offers him encouragement and helps him put a few pieces in respective holes. As the child grasps the concepts, the mother allows him to complete the task alone. This is an example of interaction influencing the cognitive development of a child. This lesson shall focus on these social interactions and the impacts of cognitive development, according to the psychologist Lev Vygotsky. Vygotsky's cultural historical theory. Lev Vygotsky's cultural historical theory of cognitive development is focused on the role of culture in the development of higher mental functions, such as speech and reasoning in children. His theory is sometimes referred to as having a socio-cultural perspective, which means the theory emphasizes the importance of society and culture for promoting cognitive development. Vygotsky believed that adults in society foster children's cognitive development in an intentional and systematic manner by engaging them in challenging and meaningful activities. We will return to our introductory example throughout this lesson to illustrate the principles of Vygotsky's theory. In our intro, the mother intentionally engaged with her child to help him understand how to fit the blocks into the designated holes. Without this assistance, he would have continued to be unsuccessful. But with the meaningful directions from his mother, he was able to successfully get the blocks into the holes himself. There are six major assumptions guide Vygotsky's theory. We will discuss each one generally. Some assumptions will be covered in greater detail in other lessons in this course. The first assumption of Vygotsky's theory is that through both informal and formal conversations in education, adults convey to children the way their culture interprets and responds to the world. Specifically, as adults interact with children, they show the meanings they attach to objects, events, and experiences. Returning to our example, the mother is now reading to her son a book about transportation. The book describes the different modes of transportation used in our society, such as cars, trucks, and boats. By presenting this concept, the book shows the little boy how our society classifies modes of transportation. The second assumption of Vygotsky's theory is that thought and language become increasingly dependent in the first few years of life. We will talk specifically about language and speech development later in this lesson. The third assumption explains that complex mental processes begin as social activities. As children develop, they gradually internalize processes they use in social contexts and begin to use them independently. This internalization process allows children to transform ideas and processes to make them uniquely their own. Returning to our example, the child and his mother are simply reading a book, but this social activity is transforming the way the child perceives modes of transportation. He will begin to classify these items himself when he sees cars, trucks, and boats in real-life settings. Vygotsky also introduced the idea that children can perform more challenging tasks when assisted by more advanced and competent individuals. Vygotsky identified two levels of development: actual development, which is the upper limit of tasks a child can perform individually, and level of potential development, which is the upper limit of tasks a child can perform with the assistance of a more competent individual. According to Vygotsky, in order to get a true assessment of a child's actual and potential development, We should assess capabilities both when the child is performing the activity alone and with a more competent individual. For example, our young child exhibited that his actual development was that he knew the blanks belonged in the holes, but he couldn't quite determine how to actually put them in. His level of potential development was being able to put the blacks in with the help of his mother, an advanced individual. We would not expect the child to then be able to solve the blocks into colors and shapes, or to do anything beyond the skill that he exhibited with the assistance of his mother at this point. Our next assumption is that challenging tasks promote maximum cognitive growth. Vygotsky described this as the zone of proximal development, or commonly referred to as VPD. VPD is a range of tasks that a child can perform with the help and guidance of others, but cannot yet perform independently. VPD will be discussed in more detail in another lesson. The final assumption is that play allows children to stretch themselves cognitively. Play allows children to take on roles they would normally not be able to perform in real life. Let's return to our example. Our same little boy who was playing with the blocks is now 5 years old. He is playing house with his friends. He is the father, and his friend is the mom, and the other friend is the child. Through make-believe play, he is able to exhibit behaviors and be a father according to the rules of his society. For example, the father takes care of his child. That would normally be impossible for a 5-year-old in a real life to do. We have covered the basic assumptions of Vygotsky's theory of cognitive development, and now I want to focus specifically on the principles of speech and language development. According to Vygotsky, speech begins as a means of communication and socializing and later becomes a tool of thinking. On his research, there are four major stages of speech development. Vygotsky's interest in language and literature blended with his interest in psychology and led him to theorize about language and cognitive development in children. He hypothesized that the development of inner speech in children develops in the same manner as all other mental processes. His theory can be used as a map of cognitive development in children. Vygotsky's theory leads one to believe that cognitive development takes place out of a need to communicate our needs to others. Vygotsky's theory of development in childhood, which he believed was concurrent with language development. The first stage is called the primitive stage. This is from birth to 2 years old. As babies, we goo and ga and cry and babble. These are examples of the primitive stage of language development. The sounds produced serve no real purpose except to produce a sound and experiment with our new capability. Just as a baby laid on his belly may make crawling motions yet not crawl, the baby may also make sounds without producing speech. As the baby does not produce speech, there is also not verbal thought or internal monologue. This does not mean the baby does not think. It only means that the child has not yet internalized his speech. The verbalization performed at this stage serves no purpose except to produce sound. There is no reason for the child to internalize during this stage. The next stage is called the naive stage. As the child begins to speak, he learns how to say words far before he learns their meaning and function. An example of this manifestation is ball. To the child, this one word can mean a variety of things. Where is my ball? Give me the ball. To an adult with an established knowledge of language, this word refers to a child's toy. To a child, though it can have various meanings. As a child develops and gains understanding of new words, he begins to produce naive sentences like where ball and where is the ball. The child uses these structures without any understanding of how to put a sentence together or why the words must go on in that order. He only knows that when the words are said in a certain way, others understand his meaning. Understanding of word order comes about before the child learns the logic of how the words fit in that order. The next stage is called the external stage. During the external stage, the child begins to use external objects to represent words. This can be characterized by the child using flashcards, objects, or fingers when counting. Another example would be the use of his name to remember letters and sounds they make. Rhyming is also used during this stage to improve memory and sound recognition. Another interesting event is the beginning of egocentric speech. The child will talk to itself when there is no one else around, and also during play with others. This is the child's verbalization of thought. The last stage is called in-growth stage. As the child's egocentric speech turns inward, he enters the final stage. He uses the skills he has acquired to perform logical tasks internally. Rather than counting aloud, he will count in his head, using part of his short-term memory. This much faster than verbalizing its thought, and just as his initial speech develops with practice, the more internalized thought and logic is used, the better the child can perform.